Welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm Ian Carlos Crawford.
And I'm Ian Martin, and today we're joined by writer and comics reviewer for Publishers Weekly,
D.W. McKinney.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello. And writer-director known for Queer as Folk, Little America, and Closet Monster,
Stephen Dunn.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm so glad to have all of you here. I was just telling Stephen and DW, this is Ian's first time co-hosting, not just one of our Angel episodes with all the co-hosts. And Ian, I feel like I sent you so many texts being like, I want you to do this episode. I want you to do this episode.
Well, with me, that's kind of what it takes sometimes. So,
yeah, with some of the co-hosts, I know that like they're okay with me nudging them 10 times, so I will do it. But I feel like Ian, you are like, you always. I feel like my Buffy stuff is like, I cried, I was happy, I liked Buffy's hair, and you have like very good like stuff. You always like, you're the watcher, you know all the shit. So I'm so happy to have you co-hosting for this.
Well, I'm not sure that's justified, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Stephen and DW, both of you are people that have been on my spreadsheet for a while to have on. So I'm happy to have you both on for this pivotal episode. We are here to talk for the 25th anniversary of it. Surprise and Innocence, a two-parter that the names you wouldn't know, but they are. It is a two-parter. And I just kind of smushed them together because I do feel like, and Ian, I feel like you'll probably agree, right? It's kind of like that is one story, right? It is kind of harder to separate the two.
I think they have dramatically different flavors, but they're definitely one story.
Yeah, like the story, I don't know like what you would wrap up with a story at the end of Surprise, but yeah, they definitely are different. But before we get into the episode, DW, would you like to start us off with your Buffy origin story?
Of course. I grew up with Buffy. I watched the original movie with Kristy Swanson when it came out. I think it came out when I was 7, but I watched it when I was 8. And I was just like, it really honed into something in my brain. Like, I love supernatural stuff. And at the time I had like a magazine subscription to some place that sent me books on ghosts, vampires, werewolves, all the spooky stuff. And so when I heard that there was going to be a TV show, I was like, sign me up. I'm there. Like, I'm going to watch every single episode. And so I watched the first episode when it came out when I was 12.
Oh,
and
nice.
The rest is history.
I love that you did watch it from the first episode. Also, now I'm trying to do the math. I'm like, God, how much older than you am I?
We're about the same. I turned 38 soon. So
okay, so about the same. And DW, I cannot not mention, you and I both had the pleasure of being quoted in Evan Ross Katz's Buffy book alongside Sarah Michelle Gellar.
I know. I feel so special.
I seriously wept when I saw that, like, it's her, Cynthia, fucking Erivo, and then me all quoted in like the same page. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm legit. Look at these people I'm quoted with.
I took so many pictures when I got my book. I was like, this is me. I'm here.
Oh my God, same. So my editor for the podcast, Ashley, she went to an event, buffering. They had an event at the like Sunnydale High School, which was so cool. And I think Evan was like there, or they had like advanced copies for sale. And she got it, and she was like, don't worry, I looked in the index, you were not cut out of the book. And like sent me a picture, and I was like, ah! Because that was my big worry. I was like, I'm not famous. I'll be cut out. Like, why? They don't need to include me in this book. Like, Sarah Michelle Gellar is quoted for the book. What the fuck could I bring? But then I was not cut out, which was very nice.
That's cool, because I didn't get any confirmation. Like, we did our email, and then Evan disappeared. And I was like, okay, did I make it or not? And so I ran to Barnes & Noble as soon as it came out. And I was like, oh, thank God.
You know what's funny is I was working at Barnes & Noble then, and my boss, because of course I couldn't shut up. Like, I didn't realize it had come out yet. And one of my managers was like, oh, you probably know where this is. Someone's looking for this Buffy book by someone named Evan Ross Katz. And I was like, excuse me, we have it? And she was like, yeah, why? It came in the other day. And I was like, oh my God, pick one up for me. It's in this section. Like, I'm in that book. And so my boss made me put like a little display at customer service being like, one of our booksellers is quoted in this book alongside Sarah Michelle Gellar and Stacey Abrams. And I was like, never not flexing about it.
Oh my gosh.
But most customers did not give a shit. Like if a customer was looking at the book, I'd be like, I'm quoted in that book. And they'd be like, all right.
I'm like, yeah, okay, keep it moving.
Fucking great. Steven, what is your Buffy origin?
Well, also like you, I started watching it when I was a kid. I was a big fencer as a kid, and one day I came home, and I'm from a small island, Newfoundland, off the coast of Canada, and it started airing. It was actually the only place you could watch it in Canada on this small little Atlantic Canadian television channel. And the very first episode I saw was I like remember it vividly. It was What's My Line part 1 when is that the one where Cordelia opens the door to the bug guy? Is that one or part 1 or 2?
That's one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw that. It was like mid-episode. I turned it on. I was like, what the hell is this? Who are these beautiful women in these clothes? I need to watch. And then I got instantly obsessed with it. I kind of came in mid-season. And then at the after the holidays, my fencing class got moved so that it was like at the exact same time as Buffy. And that was the very last time I took a fencing class because I literally quit my hobby to watch the show.
Buffy slayed your fencing classes. That's amazing.
I was like, I'm just going to watch Buffy do it. It's fine.
That's funny. Ian, do I know this? Did you watch it live? I can't remember.
No. Even though I was the same age, Buffy and I graduated the same year. I had a friend who watched it and who was campaigning to get me to watch it as well, and I think there was occasionally an episode on in the background, but I had all the dumb young guy complaints like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all of that. It took early 30s depression and that's on Netflix, okay, before I decided to really dive in, and then here we are.
I think that's how a couple of the Angel co-hosts have gotten into Buffy. At the very least, I know Jason and Kim because they were friends with me and I kind of bullied them into watching it on Netflix. But yeah, so these episodes, I really love these 2 episodes. I decided not to split them up because I do feel like it is one story. But Ian, you did say something that I thought was pretty smart. You said they are a different flavor, right? The 2 episodes?
Yeah, I was gonna look up. I know for certain that Innocence is written and directed by Whedon. But I think that Surprise is written by Marty Noxon.
Yeah,
and is directed by someone else. And as the showrunner, I mean, one of the jokes on the or one of the mentions on the commentary track is how one of the things that he was allowed to do was to sort of budget for the episodes, and some episodes got nothing, and other episodes got rocket launchers. And I think that you can
and rain.
I think you can really feel the investment on top of the difference in writing. I mean, Marty is ostensibly fulfilling on someone else's vision, and Innocence is Whedon fulfilling on his own. Yeah. So I do think that there's a qualitative difference between the 2 of them, even though they're, 2 parts of the same story. But we'll get into it.
Yes, I do think that's accurate. For me, I was like, let me just smush them together because they are like telling one story. I feel like these are like the villain intro to Angelus. This is like our villain intro to him.
For sure.
So, Steven, you are a TV writer.
Mm-hmm. Guilty.
What is different for you when you watch it live as like opposed to watching it now?
Watching it live, I mean, I was so young, so my perspective is skewed, but there was really nothing like this anywhere. And I was the only person I knew besides my dad who actually watched it. So I felt like I was watching something in like a total bubble. It wasn't until I like left Newfoundland and like found Evan Ross Katz that I was like, oh my God, there's other like people and other gay people who love this show. And so now, like looking back on it, rewatching it is just like it's so fun because they're now, even still to this day, I would say there's not really a lot of shows have tried to copy Buffy and don't really understand that like delicate line between camp and horror and how there's a specific reference I think it's actually in Innocence, so I'm not going to jump ahead, that I really feel like sums up the tone of the show. It's like at the beginning of Innocence, that where it is there's such camp moments. I won't spoil it, but it really
go ahead. Spoil. We're talking spoilers.
It's like when Angel sucks the blood out of this woman, and like who's smoking a cigarette and like blows out her smoke. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. It is high camp. It is my favorite moment, I think, in these two episodes. And it doesn't make any sense because literally there's a plot point in Prophecy Girl where Angel can't give CPR to Buffy to resuscitate her, and then like he's like turns into Angelus and suddenly he's sucking on this woman like it's a jewel. Like it's hilarious, but that's the magic of the show. It can balance this kind of comedy and camp, but have it like really in kind of a terrifying like serious scene. And there really isn't anything I can point to that has really hit that mark, maybe like WandaVision or something like that, but like it is a really delicate balance, and I think a lot of people have tried to copy it, and still after like 25 years now, no one has quite done it, I think, quite as specifically as this.
There's in Innocence at the end, there is a painful fight going on. You can't do it. You can't kill me. You know what was the worst part? Pretending that I loved you. Cut to Oz. Arm pointing at the floor. The ability to juxtapose humor and drama so successfully without one undercutting the other is one of the magical aspects of the show.
I fully agree with that. DW, what was did you feel different watching it for this as you did when you've watched it before, or no, not really?
No, not really. I remember when I watched this as a teen, because I was 13 when this episode came out, and just like feeling all of Buffy's like angst and heartbreak and her emotion, and watching it again, I was like, oh, I still feel that. But also like with my grown-up eyes, now being able to identify like more of the camp and the stuff that I love and more of the horror notes, and just being able to see the beats of like, oh, here's the buildup of this is going to change, this like narrative switch. Something I noticed is like in these two episodes, there's a lot of like pivots with the characters and changing direction and relationship changes. But I still had the same feelings of like wonder and just being like swept up in the humor, and nothing changed. I loved it.
I'm same with me. I'm like, these two, I remember I had them on VHS. These were part of like the small VHS box sets that they had put out. I remember they're also the only VHS I still have in my possession. Like I still have those. Because the cases are cool, right? And like
they're really cool.
Yeah. But so I can remember watching, it was like Buffy with the bazooka, and then Everyone at Graduation Day were what I watched like over, and like I would just go to those moments to watch them. And I don't know, they're just like teen me felt there was nothing more empowering than her fucking saying that was then, this is now, and pulling out that bazooka.
Oh my God. But I don't think there were shows that were quite as big as that. Like obviously they blew their budget in these episodes, but I don't remember I didn't remember seeing a lot of that kind of stuff on TV back then. Like it was, on quite that scope. It was so fun.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And Ian, I'm wondering, you've gone over Buffy, I mean, kind of like I have 1,000 times. But like, is there anything you feel differently about it? These episodes?
No, I mean, I'm kind of in a different, but I am not a fan of camp. The first season of the show, because of that, was a mighty struggle for me. I got into the show because I went and saw Avengers with a friend, and I was so surprised by the writing. The writing, it was loaded with set you up for one thing and then delivers something else. And the classic one is Loki yelling at Hulk, "I'm a god, you dull creature," and then Hulk whipping him across the floor like a toy. That there was something about the writing in Avengers that I wanted to pursue, and that is loaded in Buffy. I mean, pulling out the rocket launcher. I mean, say what we will about the person in general. I think that Whedon's writing gets sort of oversimplified as quippy. Yeah. And but then I'm currently playing Marvel Midnight Suns, and it's been criticized for the quippy, quote unquote, Whedon-like dialogue. But there is just something different between things where, I mean, like the current Marvel movies where it's joke, and they don't allow for the drama. I think that Surprise and Innocence shows that there is something different about this writing, and it's that precious balance. The reason I stuck with the show is because of Buffy's scene in the library in Prophecy Girl. Giles, I'm 16 years old. I don't want to die. Started to show me the promise of what this material could be. And then Surprise and Innocence for me was the hook point, because the whole idea of taking the romantic, ooey gooey teenage dying star implosion romance and turning him into the bad guy, the big bad of the season, was kind of profound for me when it came to fiction. The willingness to do that, to risk that with your audience who were so invested in the romance, I thought was a real stunner. So it was Surprise and Innocence for me, where I was like, okay, I'm in That's completely. Until then I was like, all right, I'm starting to enjoy this. I'm starting to enjoy the chemistry of the characters, and oh my God, that librarian's hot. But then once you get to Surprise and Innocence, I was like, all right, I'm in. And then Becoming 1 and 2, I was like, this is probably one of my favorite shows of all time. I knew it.
Okay, Ian, I'm glad that you kind of got to what I was going to get at, because I know everyone always cites Becoming as like, oh shit, the show really upped the ante. But I think Prophecy Girl is the first one that did it. And then I think this two-parter really, for me, this two-parter skyrocketed the stakes and showing us what the show would become. Because prior to this, I do think it was a little bit more on the camp, which I'm still okay with. I would have been okay if I probably still would have loved the show, just not as much if it was more the one-off episodes we got at the first half of season 2. I still would have loved it, but I don't know that I would have loved it the way I do.
Yeah, my love for the first season and the early stuff or rather my appreciation for it has developed from writing about it. Everyone says, the common call is turn your brain off. You're not supposed to criticize Transformers, but I love the opposite of that, which is when you really engage with something and it opens up and the themes and the metaphors sort of spill out. That has been my access to the earlier stuff.
Yeah. And I definitely think I appreciate them more, just because I love the characters so much. So it's I would watch an episode that's them just hanging out and nothing happens.
Yeah.
But so we get a lot about dreams in this two-parter. The dreams actually are something that I like. I kind of wish they had consistently kept that as a always happening when something big's gonna happen. She has a weird, right? Okay. DW, speak on the dream.
Yeah, no, that's when I was rewatching this, the first thing I thought was, what the heck happened to her dreams? Because it felt like it was a huge thing. She's a Slayer and she has these powers and, you can have prophetic dreams. And it just kind of went the wayside, I think, in later seasons. So it was good to see this, even though they were kind of discounting it a little bit, but I'm glad to see how much of an asset it was. And the revelations, with Jenny, and I was like, oh my gosh, that scene is wild. But I'm glad that they brought, we got to see this again.
Yeah.
I also feel the dreams, I also had this exact same feeling, wow, these dreams were so integral to the earlier parts of the show. But it's almost like when Angel left the series and Buffy quit the council, the dreams sort of like stop. I almost felt like there was this shift in the show where Buffy sort of gets control of her powers, and she's no longer sort of like a vessel just like receiving these dreams and these premonitions or whatever. It felt like there's something very innocent about even just like seeing her in her satin or like silk pajamas, like tossing and turning and whatever. Like it's a very juvenile sort of depiction of her. And once she leaves high school and once she leaves Angel, she doesn't really have any of that same kind of vulnerability. And I felt like there was some sort of connection there for me about her like growth.
Well, it's possible the writing team wrote Restless the Dream episode and then thought, we're done. We've officially spent. And the other thing too is I wonder if once they started doing the visions from Angel, if maybe they felt like there was flavor-wise too much of an overlap between the two of them.
I can see that.
I really like what Steven was saying, because I was thinking back to like that scene in the library when they're doing the research and Buffy's asleep on the book and she does this like kind of like body movement of like tucking herself into the book, and it just felt very childlike. And then you see Giles and Angel looking at her, and it just felt very paternal the way that they like care for her and see her. And then later on, like that kind of paternalism isn't really needed because she is able to take care of herself. Yeah. She's like fully adult, fully in her skin.
Yeah, that's really, and also it's like not great thinking that Angel does kind of look at her in a paternal way.
Yes.
You think too much about that, it's like, oh, not great. But so, okay, we get Buffy's worried that Angel, and like Buffy's so dramatically worried about Angel that sometimes it almost feels like too over dramatic, but then it's also like, oh, she's 16 and like she's just worried about like, I don't know, it tracks, right? It makes sense.
It does. I forget that when I was watching this, I was like, oh, I love the way, like the soft way that they speak to each other. And at the end, I was like, oh, girl, stand up, because this is just, it's too much. It's too much. Like the way she's like, you were going to go away. And I was like, please don't speak like that.
Yeah, they could have cut that line.
So, and then I like totally forgot that they just think Drusilla and Spike are dead because of What's My Line Part 2. Because when she was saying she's afraid Drusilla's alive, and Angel's like, no, she's not, she's dead. But if she is alive, we'll deal. And it's like, well, let me tell you what tomorrow's gonna bring. But I like forgot that they just think they're dead, which is so silly because they just fall into something.
Yeah, that's the weakest part of the season. I love this season. I will say it's like definitely one of my favorites, and I also love Drusilla and Spike and what they bring to the show. But the plot lines of them being like weakened, and like Drusilla starts the season and she's weak, and then like they swap, and now Spike isn't suddenly in a wheelchair, not healing like a normal vampire from like an organ just toppling on him, and it just like it doesn't make any sense. But whatever. I guess they have to do something.
we forgive because we love it so much. But it's funny because in the What's My Line recording, we were actually talking a lot about that. How it like makes no sense that it's like Drusilla's what is it that's wrong with her? And then Spike is in a wheelchair the rest of the season.
Well, and one of the more notorious parts of the season is that or at least within the fan lore, I suppose, is that Spike was supposed to die. Yeah. He was supposed to be written off the show in What's My Line, but was such a fan favorite that they kept him on, but didn't really have a plan for him over the course of the remaining arc, which definitely shows. But it's interesting to think about the remainder of the season just being Angel and Drusilla. And other than the finale, which I love, there are a number of ways in which that feels a little stronger to me.
You mean just without Spike?
Without Spike, just Angel and Drusilla. Drusilla's character gets a little more exploration. The disgusting backstory of the two of them and what Angel did getting explored. And fewer wheelchair jokes, which good gravy have aged terribly. Boy, do they. Angelus is supposed to be this, a big, intelligent, height of evil vampires, and him making terrible wheelchair jokes for the rest of the season just makes him look real stupid to me, let alone the discomfort that goes along with it in the aging department.
Yeah. There's something about it that like doesn't. This sounds stupid to say in a vampire show, but it doesn't feel like authentic that he's in a wheel. Like it doesn't really feel like he's hurt, right?
What happened? They don't explain anything. Like what happened to Drusilla? What happened to it? Just and there's like a burn mark on it. It just
Darla and Drew are fully immolated by Angel in Angel season 2. They are giant towers of flame in that season, and the next episode they've got some band-aids and they're laying on the couch.
This made me think a lot about what the supposed vampire lore is, because even when Buffy's talking to Angel about like if they're still alive, she says we didn't find a body, and it's like, of course you wouldn't find a body because she's a vampire and she turned to dust. So it's like then you have Spike in the wheelchair, and you're like, when is the fast healing happening here? Do you know what I mean? It also made me wonder if this was like an attempt to kind of weaken the character of Spike because he was supposed to be written off. If like you put him in a wheelchair and he doesn't have powers, then they do all the like impotent jokes and all that stuff. If it was a way to kind of like take away some of that charm and like, I don't know, like affinity that the audience had for Spike. It didn't work.
It's also kind of rehashing what they did with the Master. Like the Master can't leave his lair under the, until Prophecy Girl. It's kind of, I felt like it was kind of a lazy way of like holding back the big bad's potential,
Yeah.
But it didn't work. But I love them. So I forgive it. I did actually. I was rewatching the show, introducing my partner to it, and he was like, "Wait, so what's wrong with Drusilla? And like, what's up with Spike?" These questions, and I found myself having to like trying to explain it before I realized, oh right, like this doesn't make any sense. Like I suddenly saw it through his eyes, and I was like mortified.
Wait, was it watching it for this that was the first time your partner had seen it, or no?
No. We rewatched it like a year ago.
Okay, so I was gonna say, there's an episode of Queer as Folk literally named "Welcome to the Hellmouth," correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I want you to know, Steven, references. When that dropped, I had so many people being like, "Oh my god, did you know there's an episode named Welcome to the Hellmouth of Queer as Folk?" Like so many people DM me to tell me. It was very cute. Whenever there's like a Buffy thing, I will get like tagged and DM'd a lot, and it makes me
that's good.
But so yeah, we get Willow and Buffy kind of discuss like Angel, and I do like that they kind of make fun of like Willow's like, you really said you liked seeing him at bedtime? Like that's a lot. And they're like almost joking about the dramatics, and I kind of like that. And then I do like when she's like talking about Oz, and Buffy is like, my boyfriend had a bicentennial, because Willow's like, oh, he's a senior. Which, like, true.
I'm glad they pointed that out, because that was one of the things that really made me not ship Buffy and Angel in the beginning. It's just like, this dude is like 100 years old, and he's creepy, and he's like lurking around the school. But I mean, I like how they play it for laughs here, is like, you don't need to worry about your potential 16, 17-year-old boyfriend. Like, this guy's, he's a grandpa, basically.
Right. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, my brain, when it's like vampires, I'm like, I don't know, vampires are weird. They kind of age, but kind of not. And
right.
once it's like a fantasy character, I allow my brain to like just like suspend my disbelief, but I do fully understand not being able to do that. Because I read from one of my book clubs, I was reading a YA book with a vampire, like human romance. And the one person in book club kept being like, but the vampire is so much older than this teenager. I was like, I know, but like, I love Buffy and I really can't talk shit if I'm going to say I love Buffy. And like, Angel's also a lot older, so
I think that the show tries to keep itself safe from certain criticisms, like in that way. Like, oh, it's fantasy. But every once in a while, because of the material that they grapple with, they sort of don't get to use that shield.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And it's one of the ambitions of the show to really dig in and sort of use the fantasy lore to examine something that's real to an adolescent, which is the allegory of the entire thing.
right.
But the one that comes to mind is that I now kind of despise is the Lolita reference from Becoming Part 1, when Angel sees Buffy for the first time at her old school, and she is very deliberately dolled out to look like a young girl, and she has a sucker and all of that. And later we hear that Angel fell in love with her at first sight in that particular scene. And then you have the Lolita reference in it that is stirring the pot and making things even more gross and weird. Yeah, I go back and forth with the Angel one. The Spike one to me feels a lot, I don't know if cleaner is the right word for anything that happens between Buffy and Spike, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. But so then we get Willow and Oz's kind of like first big, she goes to ask him out, right? Or goes to at least talk to him. And I do think
this scene is so good.
Right. I was just about to say, I think Oz and Willow kind of do have the chemistry of a closeted queer person and like a really good friend that they love, but platonically. But they're very good together. And Oz, it is wild that Seth Green is playing so against how he actually is, because he's like,
and so well.
Yeah. Like, I don't know that a lot of people would like name Seth Green as having great range, but I feel like Oz is a very good example of his range, because he's in person very silly, very loud, very ridiculous, but like Oz is still the cool guy I would crush on. Like,
yes, very much so.
And like his charm is there right away, I think. His like quiet, calm, cool charm is there the moment we see Oz. And like, you know, he's even playing a fucking guitar because of course he is. Like,
I will say though, I found this scene hard to these couple of scenes hard to focus on because of Willow's blossom hat.
She wears a couple of them early on. I feel like she's still even wearing them in season 4, if I'm correct, right, Ian? Doesn't she wear some then?
Yeah, but this one's like a purple Muppet that's trying to swallow her head.
I don't even remember those hats actually ever being in style. I just remember them being on Buffy a lot.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that hat, because like just before Buffy says like, you can't wait for Xander to wake up and smell the hottie. And I remember like a laser focusing on her outfit, and I was like, yeah, it's there. Just, you know, hat on though.
Yeah. But so I love that, like, he's like, I'm going to ask you on a date. And she's like, and I'm going to say yes. And then she's like, oh, I can't. I have Buffy's birthday. And he doesn't really get upset. He's just like, oh, I like you're unpredictable. I like that. Which makes me like him even more. Like, you know, and what's in the end of next episode, he's like, I don't want to kiss you because I know you're doing it to make your friend jealous, but I will wait. Right? He's very good. So and he also, it's funny because they're so different, but like Tara does make sense as the next like love of her life. After, like, both of them are very like calm and cool.
Yes.
Even though Tara has like her like anxious stutter where she does get anxiety over things, but like when it comes to Willow, she's very like the cool collected one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They're incredibly good foils for the particular place that Willow's at in her life. As she gains confidence, or when she is lacking in confidence, she has Oz as the steady rock in her life, and sort of as she grows into the magical power and confidence with her identity in that way, Willow becomes Tara becomes more of a stabilizing influence later on. I think they both work really well for the periods.
Yeah.
I think one of the appeals of Oz is that he's kind of like the antithesis of like what teenage boys are supposed to be. You know what I mean? He's like not super loud, and he's not Xander, basically.
He's not Xander.
He's not Xander.
He has emotional depth, and he's caring, and he's like not, his emotional swings aren't like, they're not all over the place. And so he just kind of draws you in. And yeah, I think about that scene in the van where it's like the emotional intelligence for that is just like wild to me.
He has a number of those. The other one that I can think of, my partner Lonnie and I are doing a rewatch right now. We both have been doing this for years, but never have watched Buffy and Angel together, so it's been a lot of fun. But the scene that comes to mind is after Lover's Walk, when Xander and Willow are caught cheating. Willow chasing him in the hallway and him having to tell her, I've told you what I want. I want space. And because you can't give me that, I can't help thinking that all you want to do is feel better about yourself. That's not my problem, he says, and walks away. And that he gets those wonderful emotional beats, that emotional maturity that you're talking about, that I think do a great job of sort of masking his exit, which I also think is really well grounded in his character. But yeah, the bit in the van in Innocence has to be one of my favorites in the series.
Yes.
When I'm kissing you, you're kissing back. It's okay, I can wait.
And also, not even emotional maturity. I would say, like, the only other man that would ever on this show that ever exhibited that kind of maturity would be like Giles. Like, and that's it. Like, end of list.
Yeah.
So I do think that's another reason why, again, Oz is my forever Buffy crush. Like, everyone can argue about Spike and Angel all they want, but for me, I'm like, yeah, but Oz is the guy that I would want to date in real life. Like, if these were all people that I was like, if I was also in high school with these people, I would have had the crush on Oz. Like, he would have been also like, I always say my taste is a guy who looks like he could have been in a pop punk band in high school, but like isn't anymore. And that's kind of Oz. So we move on. We get like more of Xander and Cordelia. I do like, she has a very good line here that I like, where she's like, I wrote this down. Groping in a broom closet isn't dating. You don't call it a date until the guy spends money. I'm like, words of wisdom from Cordelia Chase. And like, I like that he's just like, well, we're dating. And she's like, no, we're not. Like, and she's right. They've only like made out a few times, like when they were in danger. The thing I do like about their dynamic is that it does feel very high school, right? They're not well matched for each other. They're not like, they don't feel like this forever love. It just feels like two horny teenagers who think the other one is hot, right? And that's fine. That's a thing that I will always defend in shows, which is why in season 7, I ended up defending Kennedy so much, because I'm like, there is nothing wrong with like fucking a hot person at the end of the world that like you happen to be stuck with. Like, it doesn't have to be, we're getting married, this is our forever, right? Like, I mean, Kennedy's hot. And when it comes down to it, Kennedy's hot. And she's a Slayer. I'm sure she's like very good in bed to Willow. And so like, get it, go ahead. Like, nothing wrong with it.
This moment with Xander and Cordelia was one of the moments where I did have a split between like my younger self watching this and my now self, is because I remember watching it as a kid and being like, oh, Cordelia is just so superficial. She's focusing on money, yada, yada, yada. And now that I'm like seeing all my friends going through the dating scene, and I'm like, oh yeah, you got to spend some money. Like, investment in you. Yeah.
Sage advice.
Right. I mean, Cordelia, I loved her when I watched it, but I didn't love her as much as I love her now, like as an adult.
Same here. Yeah.
It's like, she's just very aware of everything, right? And she's like, yeah, this is what it is. And she's not, I don't know, there are times when she's written a little cruel. There are times. But for the most part, she's kind of just like, this is like, in, or What's My Line recording, the guest pointed out, Cordelia doesn't even need to be helping them technically. Like she's not.
No,
she's like choosing to go help them.
Yes,
you know, and like that kind of shows like she's choosing to do it because she knows like, okay, they're like in the end these are like the quote unquote good guys. Sure.
Yeah, I had that realization watching it when I was watching Surprise. I was like, you know what? Cordy doesn't have to be there, but she's there. She's at the birthday party. She's like, you know, she has her little back and forth with Buffy, but she's still supporting her. Like she's doing the research work. And it's all of her own volition. Like she enjoys being with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like she's choosing to do it. Willow and Xander are like her other best friends. So they kind of feel like they have to, and they're like in on the identity, but like Cordelia really doesn't have to be there.
Right.
So yeah, it does say something about her. You know, she chooses. We see, I'm going to move us along on this one. We see Drew gets a package. We learn it's her birthday. We see Joyce drop the dish the way she did in Buffy's dream. Makes Buffy freak out. We see Jenny's uncle has come to town.
Oh, yes. I love him. Vincent Schiavelli. Oh, my God. He's so good. The subway ghost from Ghost.
Yes. I said that when so for the Patreon, we did a little watch along of this episode. And I said, he's one of those actors that I feel like, especially at this era, was like in everything. Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Where like amazing. he would pop up all randomly. So we kind of learn here what we don't fully learn, but they talk around like, we need to watch Angel. You were sent here because because of our family. And I do think Miss Calendar's like Robia, is it Morta?
Robia Lamorte or Lamorte?
Yes, something like that. I think she's doing like good acting in these episodes.
Oh, she's so good. I'm sorry, I have to stop right now to say, I think Jenny Calendar is my favorite supporting character in the show. I love Jenny Calendar. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because Rabia, however you pronounce her name, was like she was like a backup dancer for Prince, and then dated him and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And she has like an amazing history. But maybe I love her so much because when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Buffy merch, and I was like on eBay constantly, and I found Rabia was selling a jacket that she wore as Jenny Calendar in the show. And it was like going for some obscenely high amount. And I just messaged the seller because that was something that you could do. And I just started being like, I love you so much. I was probably 9 years old or something like that. and I was like, I'm such a big fan. And she carried on this lovely conversation with this 9-year-old version of me. So she holds a special place in my heart.
I kind of love that. Because I have heard that the reason she didn't come back ever was because she got super conservative. And if you look at her IMDb, she's in the Kevin Sorbo.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
She went to Pureflix.
Wow, you're crushing my childhood dreams.
I'm sorry, Steven.
No.
I wanted to say it before. I felt like if the episode came out and the people heard that, there would be 25 people tweeting at us to tell me that.
I'm glad you let me know. Story. Thank you for sparing my DMs.
But I do think she's good in these episodes, and for a side character. I always forget, in season 1, she's only in 2 episodes. She's not, in my brain, once she's there in all of them, but she's not. And so I do think she fits in well. I do think her and Giles have good chemistry, too. And something, I guess we'll talk about this is an overall thing. And Ian, I'm curious if you agree with me. I feel like Miss Calendar gets unfairly shit on, because, she didn't fully know what she was going into when she got there, and, she didn't know about, if he fucked Buffy, he would lose his soul. She didn't know that.
Well,
and then she dies. It's they all hate her, and then she dies.
To me, there's a big knot to untangle here that has to do with a lot of that, which is that, and forgive me to anyone who this hurts, the curse is really, really stupid.
I had the same note. Oh my god!
I did really stupid. In the video that I did for this episode, there's a whole bit about, let's say Angel likes football, and he wanders into European football, and he wanders into a bar, and oh my God, Ireland's playing England, and Ireland wins, oh my God, and Angel's lost his soul. Angel's suddenly soulless. Like the whole idea of, I think that the curse is something that exists because they wrote themselves into a corner and so had to write their way out of it. And as far as, and I'm sure that happens, like the ebb and flow of a 22 episode season, it is what it is. Right. And I think in as far as doing that and getting out of a corner with the curse, I think it's an awesome job. But the line, "It is not justice we serve, it is vengeance," sounds more cool than it is good. It is just so weirdly thought out. And when Jen's like, "Unless she kills him, Uncle, this is
insanity."
Yeah, it is. Didn't you read the fine print? In terms of the Jenny question, it's not just Jenny. Like the whole the curse at the center of it is the problem, because it's really stupid. And then there's the idea of recursing him. Then there's the idea of, well, can you just restore the souls of all vampires? Is that the thing? Except they can never be happy. Yeah. So the curse kind of is what it is. It's a source for some drama that I treasure and love, and that to me makes it somewhat forgivable. And then you sort of tweeter on the edge of the soul canon problems that DW. I think you mentioned, like, how does the soul work? In this episode, the thing in Surprise that I really struggle with is the judge. The early seasons of the show sort of have that constant, like, I know what to do. The Order of Taraka. Don't you think that's a little overkill? I think it's just enough kill. And then they die immediately. Right? And so this episode is not really about the judge. It's about Buffy and Angel and Angel's turn and all of that. And that's all lovely. But the background to it is another one of these, like, oh, the judge can't be killed by anything except a rocket launcher, which is wonderful. And I like it. But he has that power of smelling humanity in people, and he can smell that in Drusilla. You two have love and affection for each other, but there's none in Angel, so he's a pure vampire, and then that becomes meaningless later on, and is the
completely meaningless.
And is the soul of the conscience, and is that what it is, or is it the seed of identity? And a vampire and souled vampire are two completely different people, because if they are, that breaks the entire theme of Angel, because why does Angel need to redeem himself for the actions of Angelus, and yada yada yada. So there's a whole can of worms. I'm sorry for the rant. I'm stopping now. There's a whole can of worms tied into these two episodes that I just kind of like, okay, it's there. And then I just weep when Buffy's in bed with the clonic ring. And I just get it. I'm here for the pain. I mentioned I'm not here for the camp. I'm here for the pain. It hurt me good. And then I'll forgive whatever you want.
So I don't know if Ian, I think you know this. My mom is the one that got me into Buffy. Like, she watched it, and I walked in on her watching Becoming Part 2 crying as a teen and was like, oh wait, this does look good. But so I was talking about it with my mom recently. She's 76, but she's like, thankfully, like, she's very much like, oh, I loved Harry Potter, but I don't support that woman anymore, And I was telling her how people say, like, there's all those TERFs on Twitter that'll be like, ooh, Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson, like, they owe it to J.K. Rowling and they're being disrespectful. And I was telling my mom how people like say that stupid shit. And my mom was like, they don't owe her anything. She owes them. They made her more money. So like they could have cast actors that wouldn't have made her more money and the series would have tanked. And my mom said that she applies that to Buffy too, because, like, I don't think I've seen people say this, but, like, there were some weird people defending him. And she was like, if Joss Whedon didn't have good actors, that show would have been terrible.
Right.
And I was like, you're right.
Oh my God,
because especially in these early seasons,
Oh yeah.
like,
It's rough.
a villain being called the Master is something I would have written as a 12-year-old in a comic book. You know what I mean? Like, but it works because the actors are all great. The dialogue is very like tight. But yeah, especially in these early seasons, a lot of, like you said, Ian, it's like, oh, the Order of Taraka's coming. They've never been defeated. They are killed so easily.
It's so exhausting.
There's a lot of that.
The three, the three are in one scene, and then Darla stabs them. There are so many. And I'm not just talking about single episode threats. I'm talking about quarter episode threats that are called in for, the roadie from Metallica in What's My Line as one of the assassins, like the bug guy. What does he do? Turns into bugs. Very slow bugs.
Wait, Ian, so that episode just dropped today, and we talked a lot about, like, what the fuck is he supposed to do other than be gross? Like, when he, quote unquote, attacks them, he explodes into bugs, and yeah, it's gross. I would never want them on me, but, like, now what now? Like,
yeah, and the third one is just a woman with a gun pretending to be a cop. It's so some of it is so miss. But I mean, to their credit, I think that other than Anthony Stewart Head, the acting in the early seasons wasn't awesome. And then everyone kind of got good together. The writers, directors, actors, everyone kind of came along. To the point, I mean, Allison Hannigan could always break me in half with a look. But Sarah Michelle Gellar got wonderful. The Senior Prophecy Girl just takes me down every single time. But yeah, maybe the acting carried a lot of this stuff early on.
I felt some of that acting weakness in Surprise, where it felt like the lines were delivered and then there was a lot of gappiness in between like the action and reaction. And yeah, I think you can see some of that here.
Yeah, it's still growing. It's still this episode. These two episodes share a lot in common with Becoming Part 1 and 2.
Yeah,
and Becoming Part 1 and 2 is gorgeous. Yeah, and there's beautiful symmetry between the episodes.
Got a coat that looks great.
I mean, just Darla telling Angel close your eyes to mirroring Buffy telling him at the end, so that there's actual pain for Angel and for Buffy, and like it is the show coming together in its state of perfection, and we're not quite there yet with Surprise and Innocence. It is still kind of, you still have the growing pains of the early seasons, but it is there's a lot here. There's a lot here.
And so I'm going to speed us through the rest of this one. So they're planning Buffy's birthday. Buffy doesn't want them to plan her birthday. They're still going to do it. Outside the bronze, Buffy encounters the vampires. They're collecting or bringing one of the pieces of the judge. Ian.
Also, did they just rent out the bronze for like 8 people to have a birthday? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. So I also have a bronze question that I was wondering if Ian could answer. I never thought about it till this viewing for this recording, but like, what the fuck is it that Buffy she crashes through a black pane of glass that's on the stage? Like, what?
Yeah, that's the pane of glass that was behind Luke. In the second episode. Welcome, Harvest. Thank you. Yeah, she throws the thing, but it isn't about 9 hours, moron, and then stakes him. But in terms of how that fight, the blocking for that fight moved from the street inside to behind the thing, I have no idea.
No.
But it is a cool visual. It looks cool with the black glass like crashing through. I love Cordelia still yelling surprise.
Oh, so good.
So good. And I even like seeing Oz's reaction. He's like, did anyone see that guy turn to dust?
Yes.
Yeah, Marty's episodes can be a little hit or miss for me. But boy, does she know Oz's voice.
Yeah.
Her writing, she gets Wild at Heart, Phases, a bunch of the big Oz heavy hitters, Beauty and the Beasts. And while I don't love those episodes, whenever Oz is on screen, I'm captivated. The combination of Marty's writing for Oz and Seth Green is wonderful.
I would say that Marty and I think Jana Spenson write him best.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then they're like, oh, we gotta go. They do their drama. Miss Calendar tries to be slick and is like, oh, Angel should take it. He can go away for a long time and then never come back.
By the way, that was also the one time she performed her duty as like the protector of like maintaining Angel's soul. Like she's been there for so long and has never kept Angel and Buffy apart until this moment. So good for her.
She was like, all right, my uncle's in town. I got to do my job. Fine. Who hasn't been there? So they're like, this is when we expand Sunnydale once more. And they're like, we'll go to the docks. Where the fuck are those?
Yeah, I have the same thought.
But sure, right? It's like, all right, I guess.
We saw the whole city cave into itself in Chosen. There's not any water to be seen, but let's go to the docks.
There would be docks. Yeah. We just accept that. They have their fight there. They get wet for the first of 3 times, I think. Is it 3 or 2? Yeah. Yes, because Angel goes out in the rain later. They go back to the library. They want to... Ian, where are we now? I know they reassemble. The team reassembles in the library, right?
Yeah, and then it gets kind of blurry. Something.
She has that dream.
Right.
Dream, yeah.
With
which I loved. Like, sorry to like drag, but I loved that when she's having her dream and she's in this like pearl white satin gown. And then it like totally has a parallel when they switch to the scene of Drusilla in the party and she's wearing like that blood red satin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she looks so good.
Yeah, the foreshadowing. Drew kills Angel in Buffy's dreams repeatedly, and she's wearing the same outfit that Buffy is a nice bit of foreshadowing to the sex killing, quote unquote, Angel in the dreams, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah, I do. I use dreams more often. I think, especially in like stuff like this, it works for me. It just always does. We learn that it is also Drusilla's birthday. She's having a party. The judge is her gift. Buffy and Angel get there. I don't have that in my notes. How do they even? I don't remember how they get to.
They just appear in the rafters.
Yes.
They literally, no questions asked.
Fair enough. They get captured, but this is fine. I love that in early seasons, like something like this, it's like, oh, if this were like season 5 Buffy, she would have staked every vamp in there and been fine, right? Like, wouldn't have been that much of a chore for her. There's no way she would have been captured. But it's like season 2 Buffy, so they get captured. The judge goes to touch her, but she kicks him. Angel... in the bringing back the videotapes that Spike was watching in Halloween on TV, Angel knocks those TVs down to hit the judge and open this ridiculous hole in the floor.
Yeah. How did that work?
Those are heavy TVs. Those are really heavy TVs back then. Okay.
And if they like did that much damage, shouldn't the judge have like fallen through the hole or like?
Yeah.
But whatever. They escape. They go home, they have sex, and we end this part of the episode on what kicker, DW?
Oh, like, totally brain farted. With Angel getting his soul back.
Yeah, losing his soul, yes.
Or sorry, losing his soul, yeah.
And the next episode, we open right on then, and I do, like, Steven, you mentioned this, and it really is stupid, but I love it.
Oh, I love it. It's so stupid. It's the stupidest moment. So she bites. There's a smoking woman. She gets bit. He sucks the smoke from her lungs out through her neck and her bloodstream, and it's iconic.
And he blows the smoke out, and that's how we know Angel is evil now.
I loved it.
A bit of trivia I really like. I believe that woman is Sarah Michelle Gellar's stunt double.
Oh, really?
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who was also the stunt double of the Pink Ranger.
Oh.
Yeah, same stunt double.
Wait, before we move on, I just wanted to point out that, like, I think it's really ridiculous that they're in bed naked, and then in the next scene, he's stumbling out of his apartment fully clothed. And I just like the idea of him being like in so much pain, but not enough, like not too bad that he could put on his full outfit and shoes.
my chest. Where are my pants?
My like leather pants.
Yeah.
It takes so long to put on.
It's funny. So when we were watching this episode over the Patreon Zoom, like someone said that. I don't remember who it was, but someone literally said, how does he get his pants on in time? Isn't he like in pain and just running? Like suddenly he's clothed. Yeah. So we get Buffy goes back home. She's trying to pretend she was coming down from her bedroom. She's going up their bedroom, but Joyce catches her. She pretends she's coming down. I don't love, and this is just, I mean, I feel like a lot of shows do this. I don't love the like, you look different. Oh, you look different. And it's like, give me a fucking break. Like she looked stressed because her boyfriend turned evil and, is left her. But like, the like constant, so many people say it. It's stupid, right?
I wasn't sure if it was like a post-coital, like, you've got that glow about you.
Right.
Just lost your or
right. Yeah, it's true.
I thought that would be a cliche that they would subvert. The whole looking different after sex thing is kind of like, okay, so that's there, and I thought they were going to do something with it, and then it's just there.
Well, Joyce sort of leaves it open because she doesn't finish the sentence. So I also thought that's what they were sort of hinting at as well, but I don't know.
But yeah, so then we get then we go to the library. They're all worried about Buffy not being there. They argue about going to save her, where Cordelia once again makes a good point. And she says, what are we going to do aside from get scared and die? They face the judge, which like is true, right? Like Willow doesn't have her magic yet. And Buffy could barely face the judge at that point. Like, what do they think they would be able to do? So then we cut to Spike and Drew, and this is my favorite Drusilla moment in the whole show.
Naming stars.
Yes, the sing-songy way she delivers all of this. And she's like, I've named them all the same name, and there's terrible confusion. Is
so good.
So good, right?
She is incredible. She sells this insane role. I just like, I love her so much.
Yeah, she like kills it. It's funny. I was one of my friends from high school went to, I forget what acting school in LA, and he was like, oh, one of my teachers, she was on Buffy. Her name is Juliet. And I was like, Juliet Landau? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, she's so good.
Oh, man.
I also imagine her being a very weird, like, teacher, like acting teacher.
rough.
Yeah. And then enter Angelus. He shows up and he's like, immediately, I think David Boreanaz is having more fun. Like he's like, he's so clearly, I think his acting gets better with Angelus, and he like also is allowed to like do more and have fun.
I agree.
And he's wearing foundation on his lips and somehow looks hot.
Yes. Angelus is quite a bit paler, apparently.
yeah, it's true.
So they get like, Drusilla's excited. Their family's back. The judge says Angelus is clean. Which is wild because earlier he did say Drew and Spike stink of humanity, but like Angelus doesn't. Which
right,
sure,
yeah, it's another it's bad.
And then we get the library scene, which will condense this as you do, Ian. Which I like. We'll condense the whole library, the school scene where Willow walks in on Cordelia and Xander making out in the library. She runs away. Xander has to chase her. The Xander Willow stuff never landed for me, but I do think everyone's doing good acting in this scene.
Oh yeah.
Perfect.
Totally.
Yeah, like Allison Hannigan does very good cry face and very good upset face. Like the way her voice pitches is very good. And also, even though I'm not wanting them to get together, you do feel bad for Willow, right?
Yeah. It does. It does have a "get me" line, and that is, it just means that you'd rather be with someone you hate than be with me.
Yeah,
it's giving very like B story soap opera, but I'm here for it a little bit.
Yeah. And this was the scene too that I remember thinking, like, man, this hallway gets a lot of running, like
a lot,
over and over with different characters.
They're arguing. He's trying to calm her down. We later cut back to them. Buffy, we got to talk about this first, I guess, because it's kind of how it happens. Buffy goes home, but then leaves, goes to Angel's apartment, which I did read. They originally in the script, the like confrontation she has with Angel was supposed to be at her house.
Yeah,
but they last minute changed it. And then later Buffy does even say, I saw him at the house because whatever that was in the script. But so she has this scene with Angel, and God damn it, Sarah Michelle Gellar, like, I will say it for the trillionth time, right? Her acting.
Wow. Just
perfect.
Wow.
Steven, I want to hear your thoughts on her acting, since you have been a showrunner and have worked with a lot of great actors.
I am floored by her. And honestly, after, childhood me versus adult, director me, I'm floored by how she strikes the balance of this performance. Not just this, but she's so committed to this role and all of its absurdity, but she is so vulnerable and so desperately in love with him, and it's painful to watch.
Yeah.
She blows me away every single scene. But
I'm not gonna lie, I skipped the scene when it got to it, so I was like, nope, this is gonna hurt my feelings too much. Because like her face, I think Sarah Michelle Gellar has some of the best face acting. Where like she can convey like 800 emotions in like 2 different looks. And when he's just so cruel, and after he's like been cruel and is leaving and she's crying and says, I love you, it's like,
yes, God. I remember being devastated by this as a teen.
Right?
I was absolutely gutted that they finally had their little sexy time moment, and then he's just like completely an ass.
It's so hard to watch.
There's a wonderful, it's mostly in the Tim Minear episodes in Angel Season 2. There's a wonderful repetition of the Buffy Angel romance between Darla and Angel. But there's a whole mirror theme going on in that season, so it's inverted because, Buffy is always trying to save Angel and raise Angel up, and Darla is trying to tear him down. But there are a ton of reflected beats, including the scene where Buffy and Angel kiss, and Angel gets the cross burn on his chest. Darla burns Angel on the chest with his cross. But the first thing that Darla says to Angel after he doesn't lose his soul in Epiphany is, was I not good? Which I love that callback to this particular scene. But unlike, because of the inversion that they're doing with it in Angel Season 2, which I think is brilliant, it's played for comedy in Epiphany, because Epiphany is a lighthearted return to form experience for Angel, and here it is just crushing.
Yeah, I have nothing else to say other than yes, it's upsetting. I don't like watching him talk. I feel like I love Buffy so much I get protective, and I'm like, don't fucking talk to her like that. Yeah, like I'm like, you motherfucker. Like so then we get more of Jenny with her uncle, where he kind of reveals more here, right?
Yeah.
He kind of, is it that he knows, or he just like senses that Angelus is back? One of those, right?
I think he knows.
Yeah.
Jenny's
like, and Jenny does get mad at him, right? Like she even says like, he saved my life. And Steven, you mentioned the line where she's like, unless he kills her first, Uncle, this is insanity. Like, I do think that a very good delivery. And also every time the uncle's like, we serve justice, we don't serve justice, but vengeance. I'm like, oh, was this a predecessor to Vengeance Demons? Because I feel on Buffy,
where's Anya?
Right? I feel like on Buffy, there's a lot of things that were like, oh, that was a predecessor to this. Like they were like, oh, we could do that well. Let's do it bigger. Because I always say like Der Kinderstod is a predecessor to the Gentleman because he like floats and is creepy. And like someone like Sunday is a predecessor to Glory, where they were like, oh wait, a villain like that works really well with Buffy. Let's bring her back, but make her bigger. So I feel like this maybe they were like, I don't know. But so then we cut back to the hallway again. And I do like Willow saying, you have gross emotional problems and things are not okay between us. But like, it's very good. And then we get our villain reveal, which I fucking think is great. DW, talk on it.
I love this so much with them in the hallway. And then suddenly it's just like Angelus, obviously, in the shadows. His face is like blocked by darkness. And he's just like speaking in such a different cadence. And immediately it's like the hairs on the back of my neck are up. And I'm like, don't y'all know something is wrong?
Right.
And he's just like got that real stranger danger vibe to him. Like, Willow, come here with me. And oh God, it was like perfect horror notes in this scene.
Yes.
Totally. And Willow's already vulnerable coming from the whole Xander stuff. So it really, it feels awful.
Yeah. I feel like it's made worse because like they look so young and it's like, oh, I mean, I don't think I would have thought this before, but like, because we see where they go, she looks so young. And especially when he's like gripping her up by the neck, it's like, oh, this poor child. No, like I love her. She's so sweet and innocent. Don't do anything to her. And DW, you're right. I was just about to say that a lot of the Angelus stuff feels like good horror movie stuff. And this feels like it could be a horror movie reveal, right? Like, we know he's dangerous, but they don't know yet. And so we're the ones that are like, shit, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
And they're all like, they're confused or trying to figure out what to do next. And it's like the perfect opportunity for him to just creep in and like do some major damage.
Yep. And I do like that Miss Calendar comes up with the cross and she's like, Willow, get away from him. Like she knows.
Right.
And like, again, to her credit, the moment she found out what was happening, she went to them. Like she went to go like make sure they were okay. I mean, they kind of weren't, but she tries. And this confrontation between Buffy and Angel, this is something that I love. This is one of the main reasons that I love Buffy so much is like, she's allowed to be flawed. She's allowed to be upset. We like give room for both Buffy and her emotions and Buffy, the like confident superhero.
Yes. And
she knows when it's like, I'm fucking upset about this. I'm depressed. I'm going to cry, but I need to go fucking kill that vampire first. Like that's like a like big reason why Buffy's my hero is that like she allows herself those emotions, but also like if she needs to, if there's like a job she needs to get done, she's like, okay, let me do that. I will cry after. And that's literally what she does, right? She goes home and cries later on, but not till like she's done with, this plot.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love that.
I love that so much too. I loved how much space they gave her to be a teenage girl in this moment of like dealing with the devastation of her boyfriend rejecting her and turning bad, but then also being like, I have a duty to do as a Slayer and I'm about to rock this. And so, yeah I really like that balance in this episode.
Yeah. I think it's like just perfect. And like the shot of like them in the shadows, but their shadowy faces are silhouettes when he's like, things are about to get interesting is like, so good.
I think that's what I love so much about the show and like how I related to it. Like it's so rare to see a superhero character with such vulnerability. And I think I've personally I've related so much to her at that specific point in my life, but seeing both of these sides in one episode, I mean, it's just so powerful and to see that.
So then Ian, where do we go after that?
I think that's going and getting the rocket launcher because Xander has the plan, needs Cordy for it. And so it's the army base scene. And does looking at guns make you want to have sex? I'm 17. Looking at linoleum makes me want to have sex.
Yeah. That was a good line. Can I just pop back for just a second?
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting in that scene in the library where they're making the plan is that he was saying like he needs help. Willow wants to help. He says, I need a different kind of help. And it just made me think back to Surprise where Buffy's like, you're a hottie. And it's like he doesn't even see, because in my mind, I thought he was going to use Cordelia like as a distraction or something, like needed the hot girl. Because he tells her to, wear something trashy, right? And she's like wearing quintessential 90s. Yes,
Yeah.
She's wearing quintessential 90s prep. And it's like, how is that trashy?
Right, yeah.
But it's like, I always thought it was interesting that, like, again, he discounts Willow.
Yeah, that's been a striking thing, just a small sidebar. That's been a striking thing for me in the rewatch because Xander, the constant commentary about Charisma Carpenter's clothes in Buffy where she dresses like a tennis instructor or like a political intern. It's very professional. She is she looks like a teacher most of the time. And I wonder if partly that's because sort of larger, but it's just bizarre that the writing doesn't reflect the costuming, or that the writing is that way at all.
Right.
If they're going to pick on that particular aspect. And then when she goes to Angel, everything is very tight, midriffy, cut off, so on and so forth. So they change things up. It's just weird that dissonance between the script and the actual execution of the costuming in this is the way it is in Buffy. It's strange, let alone the commentary for Xander never receiving retribution for all of the shaming.
Right. Yeah, because when they go to the armory, she's wearing a silver jacket and like a headband and jeans or something, and I'm like, that's trashier than the outfit.
The only thing I can think is that bigger clothes are a little de-aging, and all the actors were considerably older than, I mean, not all of them, but Charisma Carpenter was considerably older than 16, 17 when the show started, and that might have been part of it. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. We did Isabella Gomez from One Day at a Time came on, and her character in One Day at a Time loved Buffy, so that's why I queried her. And she had done she did like a live reading of a Buffy script for charity over lockdown. So I was like, oh, cool, she's a Buffy fan. Let me have her on. And her agent was like, well, actually, she's never watched Buffy, but she's willing to watch it for your podcast. So I had her watch the first 2 episodes and then discuss it. But at the time, I think she was still young. She was like 19 or 20. And she was like, what are with these? None of these people look like teenagers. Like she was like, how old are Cordelia and Xander? Because they look like 25 or 30. And I was like, my heart hurt a little bit, but I was like, oh, well, she's right. They are that age.
Yeah. That's a big thing in the 90s, especially with like the high school movies. It's just like all of these people are not teenagers. They're 20, sometimes 30. And that's just like a thing that we were expected to like suspend our belief on.
Right. Yeah. I guess like all of us would be just so used to that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I don't know if any of you have watched the show Chucky.
No.
But that's the thing I always applaud that show for, because like the kids look like kids. And for me, especially in horror, if the kids look like kids, then I'm more inclined to be like, oh no, these poor children, than like if it's a sexy 25-year-old playing 16, I'm not like worried for a child because it's clearly a like 25, right. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, from this time period, I think of like 90210.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of the reason, I imagine labor laws being what they are with 22 episode seasons, you just can't do it. But it also changes the kinds of stories you can write, where 90210 was it was much more adult oriented in terms of the character arcs. I don't know, but so Buffy ends up a strange hybrid.
Yeah. Because I do think they look younger, right? But not that young, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think it was too egregious.
Well, she's the same age when she goes to Angel, but the costuming is completely different. I mean, if you think about You're Welcome and the outfit Cordy has on her last episode ever, and then compare that to anything in Buffy, everything is super conservative in Buffy, and the constant, I don't think your outfit makes you look like a hooker.
Right.
Shut up, Xander.
Yes, also that. Just shut up, like Xander.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of layers to it every time, but including the basic layer of like, huh?
Yeah.
Speaking of shut up, though, I do like that. So then they reassemble in the library again, and like, the one thing I think the show does well in this is like, we're not shaming Buffy for having sex, which I'm glad. I mean, she's already getting enough shame because he turned evil because they fucked. Like, I'm glad that we don't have the characters being like, oh, you had sex.
Yes.
Like, it's Giles doesn't get it, right? He's not trying to embarrass her. He just doesn't get it. And I love that Willow and Jenny do. And Willow's like, Giles, please shut up.
Take Charge Willow is the best Willow.
Yes.
Whenever you can't have a cup of coffee. Whenever she's yelling at adults, it's a ton of fun.
Yes.
But I do want to. We skipped over Oz's van scene, which I know we mentioned a little bit earlier.
That's next. Then they leave
okay. I'll hold my tongue.
So we get blah blah blah. A little bit more of a Spike and Drew. Oh, you didn't kill her, and Drusilla's like, he doesn't want to kill her, he wants to hurt her. Angela says, to kill this girl, you have to love her, which doesn't make any sense, but sure. Then we see Buffy crying over her clotted ring, which always upsets me. She has another dream. So season 2 and 3 are like pretty terrible at this. And again, Steven, you've worked on a show, so maybe I'm just being nitpicky, but like the timeline of things is always a little weird, where it's like, how many days have passed? Because like they're making that plan to go to the military base. Buffy goes home. Buffy goes back to school because she had the dream about Miss Calendar, attacks Miss Calendar, and then we are at the military base and it is nighttime.
It probably got re-edited.
Right? Yeah. It's probably like, because in What's My Line, Xander and Cordelia technically are in Buffy's house for like 2 days because like other days go by. So I don't know, but so we get, she has her dream about Miss Calendar and she goes right up to her in the computer class.
Are we okay? Finally, the scene I've been waiting to talk about this entire time. Oh my God. Well, she busts into the computer lab and chokes Jenny Calendar in front of the class. But it is somehow maybe like the hottest scene. I know Buffy and Angel just had sex in like the previous episode, but the way Jenny Calendar's like back bends over the table and like Buffy powers down on top of her. I mean, I needed to like open a window after that. I was like, holy shit.
And like, I feel bad for Miss Calendar because once again, she like didn't fully know.
Right.
But like, kind of like I understand why Buffy's fucking pissed at her, right? Like I would probably also be pissed because she didn't tell her fully everything. But like, I don't know. And like, I feel bad for her, which is when Giles is like fully on her side and is like, Buffy, you can't accuse people. And Miss Calendar's like, I didn't know everything. And that's when like Giles is like, ooh. And that's kind of when he like pulls back from her until she's
also go Giles. All of the backing Buffy's, she said get out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is wonderful. And the way Anthony Stewart Head plays but how do you know that you the way Anthony plays his realization with no lines, just the reflection in his eyes and all of that is wonderful. It is such a beautiful sequence.
Yeah. So then next we get the military base where Xander's plan revolves around the fact that he's the only one that seemed to have kept some knowledge from the Halloween shenanigans. Because like, we even talked about this in our What's My Line recording, like the first evil should have been able to be Willow technically, because she did die. Like she was dead for a day. And I don't know. I don't love that Xander, this comes and goes sometimes. But like, we're so close to that episode that I'm fine with it. Like, whatever. And I do like everyone in this scene. Like, I think Charisma Carpenter's doing really good. Like, Cordelia works because it's like, she doesn't know what the plan is. So when she's like, I'm not a soldier, right? And like, then the soldier just thinks, oh, this is some dumb girl that this guy's bringing to make out with. But the big part of this is we get the Oz and Willow van scene. Ian, do you want to talk about that?
So the scene was written specifically because they had brought, this is according to the commentary track, they had brought Oz in to be a romantic interest for Willow, and the fans weren't taking to him. And so Whedon wrote the scene specifically to lift up Oz as a romantic interest. And I think it's so gorgeous. It is so, and credit where credit's due. A part of what sells it, I think, is Allison Hannigan's face after Oz says what he says. Her tension is gone. The anxiety is gone. Thinking about Xander is gone. She is moved. She is playing moved beautifully in that. In her, reflection of what he just said. But I think about this scene about 20 times while I'm watching Buffy and Angel, because there are so many terrible lines from guys trying to date Buffy in the show. And I just wanted to share, we watched one last night and it came to mind because we were going to have this discussion. And I immediately brought up Oz and the Van. How did they do that? But then Riley says, it's because you haven't had a good experience yet. You can have the best time in a car. It's not about getting somewhere. You have to take your time. Forget about everything. Just relax. Let it wash over you. The air, motion. Just let it roll. How does that exist in a universe with...
I know.
It's okay. I can wait. The emotional maturity, the brilliance of it. There's so much... Parker has terrible lines. Scott Hope has it begins with coffee and conversation. We all know this. Maybe a cup of coffee, or maybe at the Buster Keaton Festival playing on State Street this weekend. Keaton is Keith.
God Hope.
Like, I don't understand how the Oz scene exists, and maybe it is that magic combination of Seth Green's performance and Oz's emotional maturity and the writing. But I think that in general on Buffy, the only other conversation that I can think of that hits me and is as beautiful and emotionally resonant, like I feel myself in that scene, I feel relationships that I have had, and that's the thing you're looking for. I think that's the thing that brings us back to the show, is all the way in season 7 when Spike says, it's not about me. I love what you are, how you try. You know, like when Spike expresses unselfish love for the first time in his existence to Buffy, it's not about me. Those two conversations are the only, like, I mean, Tara and Willow have a couple, so I guess the only straight relationship conversations about love that don't just make me die a little bit inside.
Fair. That is fair.
Like, this is it. I'm sorry about the rant. I'll stop now. But like this scene is just one I revisit in my head all the time because it is so beautiful, and because so many are not later on.
That is fair. That is fair. And I do, like, I was like, man, if a guy said this to me, like, that would be the best way to be turned down, and I would be even more into him. Like,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I was like immediately turned on. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I would be melting.
Yeah. Seduce me with your rejection.
I've never been like so horny for a rejection before. But so, yeah, I just love this scene, and it tells us who Oz is, and that's kind of what we get, right? Like, when they're dating, he is that guy. The only time he's not that guy is when it comes back and he like turns on a werewolf and gets like jealous over Tara. Yeah, I think that that's why I don't know. That's why I love Oz so much. And this is a very good example of why. If we only needed one scene, it would be this scene. So they get what they're going for. We know it's the rocket launcher. And this is a thing that Buffy does often, where it's like, we're not going to show you what the thing is, but when we get there, we're going to show you, but we're going to show them preparing. Almost like Buffy's speech in Chosen,
like
right?
The finale, yeah.
Yeah. And it always works for me. That's like a storytelling trope that always works for me. You know, we get the, like, Miss Calendar comes in and she's like, can I help? And they're like, get out. She said, get out. And I do feel bad for her, but also I understand. And then they go to this mall/movie theater, which, like, because, okay, so it looks like a concession stand, but then, like, later when Oz is like, arm, there's like a rack of clothing next to, like, the concession stand, and it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't understand.
I think it was just bad. Like, they just didn't know what to do. They just threw it all in one room and were like, we're gonna make it work.
Yeah, like a bunch of shit that they found in costuming, and we're just like, great, use all this. It's fine. Because, like, I do love this. I love that, like, they go to the warehouse. There's no one there. The bronze is closed. Oz is like, well, if I were going to line up to get killed, I know where I'd go. And they go, like, the confident walk with carrying the bazooka in the case, the, like, all of it. we get the judge. He comes in, he like zaps one guy, and then like it leads to a lot of other people. Drusilla and Angelus are watching. Then he gets shot with an arrow. And Steven, what happens then?
Oh man. Okay, well we get that incredible shot that pans up to Buffy with the crossbow, of course, iconic. And then she blows his brains out with the rocket launcher, and it's iconic. It's so good. Also, I would just love to point out Drusilla's jump she just looks so frantic and scared. I loved it. It was one of those special moments of the show.
The delivery of no weapon forward shouldn't stop me. And she's like, that was then.
Oh, yeah, right.
This is now. Is just...
Love that line. Love it.
So good.
Lives rent-free in my brain.
Right? Yeah, like, I think about that so often, and like, again, back to like Buffy, like she's able to be upset, but she's fucking pissed. And like, you see that on her face, like the like anger of like, I'm going to blow this motherfucker up. Like, she's like, I'm doing this because that's the problem one of like 85 that I need to deal with right now. So like, let's get this one out of the way. And oof, I think about her saying that often. And it was definitely worn out on the VHS tapes that I have. Like, I just...
Oh, yeah.
And it works as like a cool superhero moment. It works as like a storytelling moment of like her confidence coming back. I just...
And I love his little like head tilt. What's that? And then boom.
So good.
It's so good. She gets to watch Angel squirm after all that. It's such a good turn in her as a character. Like she's also surrounded by friends. You know, it's obviously the metaphor of like you get through this kind of stuff with your family. Like it's so great. I love it. Also, there's that like poof of smoke on the ceiling. I've always wondered about like what. Do you remember that? It was a very out of character shot for the show. And I was like, did they really explode something in that mall? And like, that was the air that was in the room with all of those people. That seems really unsafe.
Yeah, especially because like, if it were like not real smoke, it would look super fake. So it like is smoke.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I did read that they filmed this at, where is it? They filmed it, multiplex set was in a closed Robbins May department store on South Grand Avenue in Los Angeles. But yeah, I don't know. Ian, I'm sure you feel the same way, right? This is a very good moment.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Flawless. I mean, like the judge aside, the bits with Angel and Drew are wonderful. Drew sort of running off. The face off under the water is gorgeous, which, you know, is in my head now is a weird continuation of the rain from the end of Surprise. There's something going on there for sure. Like she gets to be out in the rain with him. And then always the juxtaposition of humor and drama, but without one undercutting the other. It is what's unique about the show. Like I said, there's it's easy to pigeonhole Mutant Enemy writing style, but there's everything else feels like a little bit of a lesser version that that when that term is used as a pejorative to me, because it is such a balancing act. It's such a wonderful dance.
Yeah. So she has her fight with him
in the water sprinklers.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I have a note here that says water sprinklers. They really pulled out all the stops. They were like, we're going to make this episode wet.
And like even the way she like pulls out her steak, I think is like iconic. Like I think of that shot where she's like, because like the way her body moves is she is really angry and like it shows. And then I love, you know, when I watched this when I was younger, it was like, oh, that's dumb. She should have killed him. But like as an adult, you're like, yes, emotionally, she would not be ready to kill him. Yeah.
She's not there yet.
Yeah. And I love that she knows that. I love that she fucking kicks him in the crotch and is like, give me time. Like she can't bring herself to kill him, but she's going to humiliate him in this fucking rain. And I love that.
And I love that she's wearing her cross again.
Yes, she is.
Also, this was a successful example of product placement because I totally watched the movie Quest for Camelot because there were posters everywhere behind them.
It is only that movie, right? Like, I don't think there's another real movie poster. So we, DW, did you have something to say about this scene?
Oh, no. Well, the only thing I want to say is I love that, like, the buildup of Angelus being this really big, bad vampire. But then even when he's, like, beating her down, she gives it as good as she gets in this scene. I just love that.
Yes. So then she leaves Angel, and we cut to Giles dropping her off at the house. And this is, hands down, my favorite Buffy Giles moment of the entire series is this. Like, fuck, the writing of Giles, it's bananas that Joss Whedon created Giles. Just Giles is like, he's such a good, he's like one of the only, again, it's like him, then Oz, end of list. That like, he is never going to shame Buffy. Even in season 7, I can understand why he wants to get rid of Spike. Even like, that's a shitty thing he does to her. But even then I'm like, I can see his point of view. Spike did sexually assault her. She is like, we're spending too much time on Spike, even plot wise. So like, I get it. But also I get why she was fucking mad at him for that. But like, other than that, I don't think Giles, and Helpless, there are folks that have cited Helpless as why they hate Giles. But for me, that's still early on. And it's like he's doing his job and he feels bad and he turns around, right? Like he does.
Well, he's allowed to have flaws. Yeah, I mean, totally. One of the things that is beautiful about the show is that the characters change over time. Yeah. We saw that Willow, in her romantic partners, changes, grows, understands herself, and becomes someone different. You're not the same person that you were before. And I always read that scene in season 7 where Giles has had this crisis in season 4 of who am I if I'm not a watcher? Who am I if I'm not Buffy's watcher? So on and so forth, of his flaws raising their head and him trying to reclaim his identity. I love the scene in Helpless because it shows Giles is flawed and he makes a mistake and atones for it. Yeah. Your characters have to make mistakes.
They can't be perfect. Helpless, besides like the obvious best episodes of the show, Helpless is my favorite for a lot of reasons. I think it's one of the best horror episodes of the show. Like so truly scary. That room of Polaroids of Joyce. Oh my God. So scary. But I think the story of fatherhood, which is just always a story that really resonates for me, really comes through in that episode. Just, of course, like, as you said, like Giles having flaws, but he has a turn and a realization that this institution that he's a part of is harming Buffy, and he betrays them to protect his child, that is, I think, one of my favorite parts of his. But I think there's a really nice parallel between that final scene in Innocence and Helpless.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like, another thing that I like about their relationship is, he has her back throughout these 2 episodes. You know what I mean? And they don't stop. They don't like have her like thank him or give him a hug. Mm-hmm. She's going through it and she's just crying because Giles is giving her room to be like, hey, you didn't do anything wrong. This is a guy you loved and you didn't know that this would happen. Like, whatever. And what is it that he specifically says? Like, he's like, if you're coming to me for, I wish I wrote it down. It's
if it's guilt you're looking for, Buffy, I'm not your man.
Yes.
The only thing you'll get from me is my support and my respect.
Oh God,
I could cry just hearing you say that, Steven.
It's incredible. It's it's the line that like every child should hear.
Right?
I think,
Yeah, everyone wants.
Yeah. I love you too,
God. As a card-carrying person with daddy issues, that one ticked a box on the card.
I'm right there with you.
Right in the heart.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
And so she goes, and I the thing that I do like that they don't hug. I like that she's like, because we forget that she's a kid, right? She's just this upset teenager, and she has every reason to be upset. So she just kind of like, goes into the house, sits with Joyce, and we get the moment of like, I'll just let it burn. And Joyce is like,
I love that scene too.
What did you do? And she's like, I got older. And then we see the black and white. We hear the black and white film playing. Ian?
Unlike Giles, that's a wonderful scene that I wish we had many more of, because it's one of the rare moments of genuine intimacy and compassion between her and Joyce. Joyce is so often written as Lonnie calls it on Chipperish a conflict vending machine, where she's just sort of there to dispense groundings and I don't want to be disappointed again and all of that. And especially when it comes later in the show, around season 5, for reasons we don't need to get into, I wish that more of those moments existed, because it's nice to see genuine affection between the two of them.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because my mom's like one of those people where she'll like watch shows, and like if a Buffy rerun, like Fuse plays Buffy rerun, so she'll watch them when they're on, but she's not like a rewatcher. Like she won't like do a rewatch of a show. But like the weird stuff that she does remember from Buffy, one of the things that it's like she loves Cordelia and Spike, and she hates Buffy's mom. Like and it's because of that. Like she was always antagonistic with her. She didn't support her as a Slayer. Like my mom, you bring up Buffy and you even say peep about Joyce, and she's like, I hate that woman. Because like my mom gets really mad that like, and I think it's that, Ian. It's that you're right. It's Lonnie's right. It's like she's more of just like lots of times she's there to create a conflict.
Yeah, the only character building bits I can think of for Joyce are Band Candy, where she is so adorable. She is so adorable. Her flirting with an interest in Giles, just getting to see a softer, more vulnerable and human side of her, so we can connect with her as a character. And the other one I love is Pat. People hate Pat. The way I describe that kind of character is a poison juice box. Kathy from Living Conditions is another one where they are so sweet that they are toxic. But that she exists, that Pat and Lonnie's sure that Joyce and Pat made out after too many schnapps.
A lot of people have said that. Yes, a lot of people on Twitter have said that to me.
Yeah, your mother just read Deep End of the Ocean, and she was just a mess. So it's good that you're back. But there's not enough of that because Joyce is so present. Giles is more integrated into the stories, so he develops alongside of everyone else. But Joyce, I just wish Joyce had more of those moments, because the end of Innocence is a really warm, melancholy moment.
Yeah, I would agree.
Joyce is the parent, but Joyce is the parent. I'm actually more forgiving about Joyce because she represents the parent who's really on the outside of her child's life. And I feel like that is, my final note on the episode is just parenting is hard. is what I wrote. And that's how I really feel about Joyce. Like the way she looks at Buffy, the way she knows, I read it as like she knows she can't really ask the questions that she needs to without like upsetting her right now. So she's just gonna like sit with her pain and like be there for her. And I thought that I agree. Like I think that's a beautiful scene, but I'm a little more patient with Joyce's growth.
So now that we are at the end, favorite scene, DW?
In Surprise, it's definitely the surprise party at the Bronze. And then in Innocence, of course, it's the rocket launcher scene.
Yeah. Steven?
There's a lot. I think my favorite scene out of both episodes is Jenny Calendar getting choked on the desk.
Fair enough.
And that's all I'll say about that.
Ian?
Favorite scene in the first one is anything with Oz in it. Hey, did anyone else see that guy turn to dust? So I guess the party. And Innocence has got to be the van scene with Oz. I love Oz.
Yeah, my favorite scene is the bazooka, just because like that's one of my favorite scenes of the whole series. I don't think Teen Me found anything as empowering as that scene. Like it was everything to me. Favorite outfit, Steven?
Okay. This is where I have it's way too many options to pick from. I like. Okay, so I'm torn between the first outfit that she wears, the white coat with the black mini skirt and the knee-high white boots. So good. Like, what an amazing look. But then I'm quite fond of the giraffe printed pants that she wears.
Yes.
That travel into Innocence as she like wakes up and comes home the next morning. Those are big ones, but I think also like I want to shout out to Drusilla's like regular Drusilla red lace bodice look. I think her outfit is like one of my favorites throughout the season, but more, I was really disappointed in Innocence when she didn't wear that like mink fur collar coat that she wears, I think like later in the season. I was like, where is it?
Too.
Yeah, Becoming. I was like, what the hell? I was really disappointed because that sweater she wore over that red dress was terrible. Anyway.
DW?
Yeah, we had the same exact choices. I loved that opening scene with the mini skirt option. I felt like it was quintessential 90s chic.
Yeah.
Also the pants, and I loved Drusilla in Innocence at the mall where she's wearing like the red corset and the red skirt, even though it's kind of blocked from the coat. But I love that the coat had like red stars or flowers on it that really matched, and her pumps, perfect.
I imagine it's not hard to make that jump in those pumps. Ian?
Yeah, Drew in the red top thingy. The thing I always the thing that's very unique about Juliet Landau's performance is it's also part of Drew's identity is in how she moves.
Yeah,
she's incredibly physical. The thing I'm reminded, and her vampire makeup looks different than everyone else's.
It does.
When it's much more, she looks more like a viper. And kind of in that note, the way she moves is, and I don't mean this in a negative term, I mean in sort of its elegance. She's kind of slithers, sort of just weaves in and out of a room, weaves back and forth, and the red top really goes along with it. And Innocence, the only one I could remember was Cordy's Silver Surfer jacket. Disco ball, super reflective jacket stands out to me because, again, she's so she's so preppy. Like her outfits in Buffy are so conservative that jacket stood out to me.
Mine is just I love Drusilla's like. It's not a corset, but the red top with like the darker reds, blackish dress skirt. I like that outfit. I think it's one of Drusilla's iconic outfits, but also Stephen DW, you mentioned Buffy with like the giraffe print pants and the pink. I think that's cute. What grade do we give this episode? I give it an A+. Ian, what grade do you give it?
Did you give both of them A+?
I'm grading them as a whole, so I give them an A+.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because of their very different flavors, I think I'd give Surprise a B+ and Innocence an A+.
All right, Stephen.
I give Surprise an A and Innocence an A+.
DW.
I'll grade him as a whole A-, because Surprise is like a B for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, thank you all for joining me. Thank you, Ian, for co-hosting your first non-Angel episode with me.
But of course.
And if you all like Slayerfest 98, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to our Patreon. Any and all support is much appreciated. I just changed up the tiers. We're going through Harley Quinn Season 3 over there. I've added live watches. And if you want to follow us on social, we are at SlayerFestX98. If you want to follow me, I'm at ENXCarlos. DW, where can everyone find you?
Twitter and Instagram, the DW McKinney.
And Stephen, where can everyone find you?
I am not Stephen Dunn on everything.
And Ian, where can everyone find you?
I talk about Buffy and Angel on YouTube at youtube.com/Passion of the Nerd.
And thank you all for joining me. I feel like this was like, I'm so glad I had all three of you because this is like a very important, iconic episode of the show. And yeah, I was glad to talk to you. This was a really fun conversation. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.